Okay, we're live. Hello, everyone. Thanks for
Broadcast
joining
is
us.
live.
I'm
Hi,
coming from
everyone.
my office, and Dylan is currently streaming from a prison cell, as you can tell.
No, this is purgatory. Look how good that background is. We can
Is
like
it
crop.
all right, all right, all right, all
Yeah,
right.
basically.
So today I got some very exciting things to go over. We're going to be looking at a new feature that I rolled out this morning with some pretty cruddy timing. We'll get into that soon, but some of you may have noticed that Spotify has been offline since 2 p.m. So that's 5.5 hours of Spotify having technical issues. And this new feature that I rolled out today relies heavily on Spotify's API to search for artists. So without further ado, let's get into the new feature. In a nutshell, you can now filter curators based on similar artists. Now, this feature rolled out this morning, as I said, and it's going to go through a couple of iterations. It's going to get better over time, but I will show you today what it looks like now and why it's cool and the way it gets factored into things. And I'll also tell you a little bit about what's coming over the next couple of days, because I'm a sort of launch and iterate type of person. So I like to code, roll things out, and then keep working on it. And I've got these ideas for what's going to happen, but I haven't done them yet. So without further ado, how about I just go ahead and share the screen, and then you can actually see what it is that we're getting into. How's that look, Dylan?
I think that's an excellent idea, Jason.
Great.
Yeah, it looks pretty good. We've got a big SubmitHub covering our credits in the top right corner, but everything else.
That's good. We want to keep this secret. I don't want people to know whose account this is.
It's
my secret account. Yeah. I have a secret SubmitHub account where I go and I test things out. So I'm going to pretend that I am representing two artists that I quite like from the folk music world, Kings of Convenience and Feist. And I'm going to go ahead and submit a song that's about 2 or 3 years old. So this isn't exactly new or interesting, but it's going to show us what this new feature is. And we're going to get there pretty quickly. A lot of this looks the same way that it's looked for years now. The first thing we ask you to do after you've chosen your song is to choose whether you want curators, influencers, and no longer record labels. We are not supporting that. If you don't know why yet, you can check out our previous live stream from about 2 weeks ago where we talked about sunsetting label submissions. So in this case, we're going to go ahead and submit to curators. And this next prompt is exactly the same as it always was. Ask us what type of credits we'd like to use. I'm going to skip through that because that's not what this podcast is about. Is this a podcast? I don't know. Here's where things have changed. It's like a version. So what has changed in this process of the submission flow is that previously we asked you to select a song, identify the types of credits that you wanted to use, who you were going to send to, influencers or curators, and then you would land on a page that asked you for your preference of feedback, your copyright selection, and your genres. And then about 6 months ago, we added something called moods, which kind of helps. And today we've added something called similar artists. Now, some of you might remember that we asked you a question when you were uploading your song about who the similar artists might be. That question is now gone. It has moved into the submission flow, and it acts as a filter for the curators that you're going to see on the final page here. So there are 3 things on this page. I've got this nice little step counter down at the bottom. This is new. So you can see we're on step 2 of 4. So on step 2, we're going to ask you about similar artists. We're going to ask you about your genres, and we're going to ask you about your moods. These 3 things power the genre match score, which I think is one of the most important metrics on SubmitHub, especially if you are just running through the list as quickly as you can and you don't have a lot of time. The genre match score is one of the most important to pay attention to. And in my mind, there's this perfect holy grail of getting to a point where we can point artists in exactly the right direction for the curators who would be most willing to like their songs. And one of the limitations of genres is that they're very subjective. Not everyone has the same definition of the genre. Not everyone knows the definition of the genre. And so you often find artists struggling to choose the right genre, and they mistarget things. And it's a frustration for curators who get songs that they don't believe are tagged properly. But it's also a frustration for artists who end up sending their song to a bunch of incompatible matches. So the idea with moods, which I added 6 months ago, was to try and add a second dimension to that. But I always knew that the better dimension that I could add, let's call this the third dimension. Oh my God, our genre match has gone from 2D to 3D. So the third dimension is artists. Who do you sound like? Because that can actually push us in the right direction, and it can almost overpower or counteract these potentially inaccurate genre selections that people can have.
Yeah.
So that's
I just want to add one thing there, was that the previous iteration of this dimension, which was just artists filling in the artists that they felt they sounded like, as you said, didn't factor into the genre match score, but it was an extremely important part for when a curator received that song. I always found myself looking at, oh, cool, interesting. This song is supposed to sound like Arctic Monkeys, or whichever artist that they thought was important.
Yeah, so the original iteration actually came from Indie Shuffle. So if you've ever visited our blog, Indie Shuffle, at the top of every song, there's a sounds like section, and then it lists out 3 or 4 artists that we think are similar for that song. And when I built SubmitHub, I very much so had that in mind. And so the same thing existed, but it's always just been plain text. It's not hooked up to anything fancy. It doesn't feed into the algorithms, but it's always been there for curators to reference. So really, I'm calling this an upgrade. This isn't. There's a lot of other platforms out there right now throwing around things like AI and machine learning for targeting, and I think they are not being very honest with their usage of the words. And we debated calling this machine learning, but ultimately, I don't think this is machine learning. We're just using tons and tons of data to better identify matches for you. So the machine is learning from a constant changing set of data. But what makes machine learning different is that actually the algorithms for figuring out what's right, those change. But my algorithms are written by me. I'm not a machine. I am a human. So therefore, this is human learning. Or like old school coding. I don't know. Anyway, I'm just not going to mince words.
I mean, Indie Shuffle's tagline was always, what was it?
Humans are better than robots.
Than algorithms.
At music curation.
Humans are better than robots at music curation.
At music curation.
How that's aged.
Still true. It's still true. Okay, so here's what's happening. We've added a third dimension, which is similar artists, and this is an upgrade to the previous one, and you'll see why this is an upgrade. So first of all, it is pre-populated with the 2 artists that I'm submitting. This is a collaboration between Kings of Convenience and Feist. So it's pre-populated with those, and it kind of says it's the current one. But I might think that maybe there's someone else that this sounds like. Clearly, you can see I've been choosing Radiohead and Bonobo, but who else does Feist? I mean, The Lightest Boy Alive is actually Kings of Convenience, so it's sort of the same band. Oh, man. And do you know what's actually kind of missing? Let me refresh it and see if this works.
Tell me you're a blogger without telling me you're a blogger. Oh, what happened there?
Well, so Spotify's been having some issues today, but what it should be doing and isn't doing is it should be suggesting a list of other artists that this might sound like. So that's kind of messing up on the search. The search is there though. Who else does Feist sound like? If I search for Feist, I might
Aldous Huxley.
Here we go. Angel Olsen.
Cool.
So what this is not doing right, and I love these demos because this should be happening in real time,
the demo on Livestream.
Yeah. Well, hey, this rolled out this morning. Here's what it should do. So here's this is the underlying thing. We rolled this out about 2 weeks ago, but this shows you a little bit about what's going on behind the scenes. But when I choose an artist, it should show me. It's not doing it. You know what? I'm going to blame Spotify here. It should be showing me the recent ones, and I think Spotify is having some issues.
Yeah.
The way that this works, when you actually interact with it and when Spotify figures out their thing, is that it will pre-populate based on, so if I searched for Angel Olsen, for example, or even Radiohead, and I go ahead and I add Radiohead here, it's going to show me other artists that sound like Radiohead, and it's actually really easy to click through. It seems to be broken right now. That'll be fixed by tomorrow. Either
who knows when
Spotify
Spotify's
fixing it or
coming
me.
back? Who knows? Maybe
Dude.
maybe Daniel Ek is gearing up to go to Africa Burn, and he's just dropped the ball.
You're going to Africa Burn next week. Okay, here we are. So I've gone ahead and I've chosen some of the similar artists that I think this song sounds like. I've chosen my genre, which is folk, and I would say that this is a pretty chill song. There we go. So now I've got my three dimensions.
An additional thing that we didn't get to demonstrate there is that you get a maximum of 5 extra artists.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah. So it'll give you
you can go up to 5.
I wouldn't.
Excluding these two.
If it were me, I would probably stick to 3. I think 5 can be overwhelming.
Yeah. And that number, just to clarify, is excluding. Mm-hmm.
How does that affect your genre match score? Actually, interesting point.
It will be less focused, but might help more. You'll find, let's say that you choose, well, I'll get into that in the next one. I'm going to remember that question and I'm going to address it in the next step because we're almost there. When I hit this and I go to step 3, you're going to see some of the familiar stuff that you've seen before. What's actually going on behind the scenes, though, is that I'm running these intense database things to try and look at your 3 dimensions and figure out where the curators should fall. And I'm using this genre match score to represent that at the end. So we'll get there in a second. Another slightly new thing here is that I ask you for your email and your communication preferences up front. This used to be something that we requested when you hit submit at the end of your submission. I'm going to skip that stuff. We're not talking about that today. We're talking about similar artists, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
there's an interesting question by Alphatude on the YouTube chat, which is, but people, I think you can actually pull it up, right? Isn't there a neat feature that can
right? So this is there you go. Okay, I was hoping to I'm just going to answer this now because here it is. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I was about to say that actually the song is a better fit for someone who shares more commercial artists. That's kind of the
possibly, but I also think this is a non-issue
answer.
I think this is a non-issue because of the way this works. So when you type in a similar artist, what I do, and it's actually good if you type in a big one. That's not necessarily a problem. Most people aren't going to type in the biggest ones, but you're going to get a bunch of mid-tier artists. And, I've kind of been looking at the data coming in, and you're getting a lot of Spotify people with 50 to 100,000 followers. So sort of that mid-tier of made it. I mean, obviously, if you got 50,000 followers, you're actually top 1%. But you know what I mean. They're not huge artists, but they definitely make a living, and people know who they are, and that's why they're getting put in for similar artists. The reason that this, you got a lot of background noise still. The reason that
I have background noise.
Yeah.
Okay.
The reason
Give me one
that
sec. I'll see if I can turn that down.
Just mute your mic when you're not. There he is. He's gone. Hallelujah. Alfie, the reason that this isn't really a problem is because the way that this algorithm works is that when you type in an artist who you think this sounds like, so in my case, I chose Angel Olsen, right? What my formula does is it looks at Angel Olsen, but then also looks at the 20 artists that have been listed under her fans also like section. So if you go to her Spotify page, I wonder if I can just pull that up for you. Oh, yeah. And then I can just share this tab. There it is. Okay, so if I go to Angel Olsen's page and I scroll down to her fans only like, I actually consider all of these people too as part of my query. So I'm not just looking at curators who featured Angel Olsen. I'm also looking at curators who featured any of these artists. So I really spread it out quite a lot. And then I go one step even deeper. I then go look at all of Angel Olsen's related artists under their fans also like, and I check for overlaps there. So by this point, we're starting to get pretty deep into, well, I mean, some of these are decent names, but what we've done now is we've gone through first, level 1 is the artist themselves that was typed in. Level 2 is an extra 20, and then we're doing an extra 20 on top of that. So we're getting up to 400 artists when you type in Feist that are going into this algorithm. So it's pretty intense. And what that means is that the web spreads far enough that you're going to lose that concern of a hyper-focused person.
Just to add to that, if the artist insists on choosing, I don't know, Beyonce as their artist because they think it's bigger, it actually is just hurting themselves. So there isn't really a benefit to choosing artists that are way out of their scope. I guess what you're saying is that
I don't think we can expect artists to do that. They're going to choose what they're going to choose. They're not going to think about it.
I think maybe what Alfie's saying is that people are more likely to choose artists that are better known, and that Alfie chooses the lesser known ones. But I think
that's exactly what he's saying.
Reach through, but if that sort of reach through that you have going, that grabs the stuff that's adjacent, well, actually, I'm sure that'll capture. It'll be more of a catch-all.
Yeah,
I think I just summarized exactly what you. I think I just summarized what you said.
ChatGPT did. That's my point. The web gets cast pretty wide, and so I think that you'll end up getting that coverage. But then the other thing to factor is this is 3D. It's not just 1D. The artist matches themselves here are not going to be the be all and end all in this. It's an influence in the genre match score, but it's not going to push it too hard one direction or the other. Another question that is related to this is that many of our curators do not actively maintain Spotify playlists. And so I've taken steps to make sure that they don't get punished or hurt by this algorithm. Their genre match is actually being calculated slightly separately. And those that I do have information for, theirs gets calculated separately. And then they sort of get mushed together at the end. And that avoids punishing people who don't have any data. I'll just tap on that future algorithm a little bit later, but I want to show you what's going on here when we get into this and we do the genre match stuff. You'll see that under the genre match section, we've cleaned it up a little bit to try and represent these three dimensions: genres, similar artists, and moods. And interesting. I don't even remember coding. That should say moods. It should be like a header that says moods, but that is the mood right there. And so the similar artist shows up here and it says that they get featured regularly. This is going to be something that I'm going to work on a little bit more in the way that you can see it, but that is factoring into their genre match. If I click on that, I can see that out of the 4 artists that we are filtering for, their playlists have featured an exact match of these artists 4 times. Then we go down that next level. They've featured 11 of the fans also like. And then if we go down that secondary level, they featured 84 of them. So these get weighted slightly differently. And this can be a little numbery, a little bit confusing. But this is my point of there are up to 400 different artists being weighted for each one of your selections. And that kind of feeds into all of this. So Alfie is asking a question. I think I can actually just wrap it up. It really is as simple as this. It flows through similar artists. It feeds into the genre match. There's not many bells and whistles. I'm not putting like these massive blinkers on their profile saying, hey, these guys love Feist and Kings of Convenience and whatnot. It's going on behind the scenes. And the whole goal here is to get you a better genre match score. So what I can do now is get a little bit into the ins and outs of this algorithm and the things that I'm taking into consideration. So Alfie points out a really important thing. What do we do with blogs who don't necessarily have playlist data? And how do we know what they featured? So the most obvious and most available way is to look at your history on SubmitHub. So in your case, Alfie, we've got a lot of history, which is great. This will be a little bit more difficult with a brand new playlister. But what we can do is I'm in the process of coding this. Spotify's API has slowed things down a little bit. But what I'm doing is I'm actually going through the how many approvals have we got on SubmitHub now? 4 point something million, almost 4 million. So I'm going through our 4 million approvals one by one, and I'm busy trying to associate them with an artist. from the Spotify ID, because I'm using Spotify IDs to try and link this back. So what I can do there is, based on your approval history, I can build a profile of the artist that you are likely to enjoy, and I can factor that in here. So how do we know all the artists that you featured? We already have been capturing and collecting that data. I just need to clean up the database a little bit, get the associations going properly, and then I can write another little human learning algorithm that factors in your history sharing as a blog. So that'll also feed into this. Again, in the absence of data, I don't want to punish someone and assume that they don't like that artist. So they get sort of treated slightly separately with this genre match score. As a tangent, there's a similar thing with Spotify playlisters. We look at how consistent their playlists are in terms of genres. Like, is their playlist really focused on genres, or is it all over the place? And if they're really focused on genres, they get a little boost to their genre match score. And in that similar vein, we don't punish people who don't have Spotify playlists. We treat that separately. And so you could still be a 10 out of 10 as a blog, even though you don't have any Spotify playlists, because your weightings are slightly different. You're playing a different 3D chess. So yeah, I'm going to be building up these profiles over the next couple of days. It all happens in the background. It doesn't look too complicated, but I think what it will allow us to do is get better targeting that's not just dependent on the genre match. And hopefully this flows through with higher approval rates, and we just start to see artists having more success and curators getting better songs that are more aligned with their taste. So hopefully it pushes us in that direction. And I think there are some other features that I will add soon. For example, to filter the list to only show curators who have this artist match. I don't think it's right to do that just now, because we're only basing it on Spotify data, and that would eliminate most blogs. But once I've got that up and running in the next couple of days, I think you could go to this list of curators and type in the artist that you think you sound like. So if we say it's Radiohead, I'm going to go ahead, save that. I actually know on the back end, because I've got some fancy code I can see here. There's 283 curators that are matching this. I must have some other it's the folk filter. So out of 1,000, I currently have 283 curators who have featured Radiohead or similar artists. It's obviously one of the biggest artists, but this gives you an example of how deep that really goes when you get into the nesting. And if you wanted, I would probably just have a little checkbox here that's going to say, narrow this down to those 283 so we can see. I'm rambling, huh? Okay. Any other questions?
No, I'm just muted. That's all.
Okay. This one, is there a way?
I've also
yeah. Go ahead.
I have sort of answered these in the chats, but the conversation was, is there a way to just look for artists without genre match? To which I said there isn't. And then the next question was, will there be a possibility to do so?
I'm not planning on doing that.
The question I answered to this one, or the question I asked to answer this, will there ever be, and for artists who are more alternative, essentially there's two things that I think about when looking at that is, can you name an artist that wouldn't have an associated genre? And then also, if the artist is so obscure that they don't have a genre that would even fit into this, or any similar genres, then are they going to be in any of the playlists of any of the curators anyway?
Yeah, it seems a bit unlikely.
Lorne is absolutely, you could classify Lorne in a whole bunch of the genres that we have on SubmitHub. So I don't know why we would need to get rid of genre for that to happen.
Right now, I'm not going to get rid of genre. It might not be impossible. Look, for example, you can go to this list here, and you can go. Once I put in this checkbox to only show people who like Radiohead, it would hypothetically work without choosing a genre, but you can't go through the submission without choosing a genre right now. And for the time being, it's a pretty essential part of of the way that things work on SubmitHub. You know, curators sign up, they choose the genres that they're interested in. They're not choosing the artists that they're interested in. There's just way too many artists for that to really be viable. As is, we've got 230 genres, so it's already getting kind of crazy there.
Also, if you consider what your search would look like if you were to just rely solely on an artist match, you by taking out that genre match, you're giving yourself kind of a weird view of whether that it's a good fit or not, because I could have a playlist filled with Lorne, but you know, and I do technically kind of like them, but I don't actually none of my like main blog posts are actually about Lorne. It just happens to be someone I like on the side. So you're not the genre match with the genres included calculates how much they've approved within those genres, and where they share them. And if you were to just, basically what I'm saying is, if you were to just go solely based on an artist, I don't know if you necessarily like get such an accurate read of who's a good fit for your music. I think the having genre in there, you know, at the moment is kind of your best bet for like finding the best.
We're balancing them, right? So the idea here is to be able to add, to offset incorrect genre choices. We're adding this extra dimension to help prevent people going completely down the wrong path. So they might still choose the wrong genre, but with the artist, we can try to steer it back to better results for them. That's really what we're trying to do. And having both of them together is only going to help both the artist and the curator. I know for some people this is difficult. We had an email when this rolled out within 30 minutes from someone saying, look, I don't sound like anyone. And behind the scenes, Dylan was able to name like 3 artists off the top of his head that they did sound like. So some people think, a lot of people think that they are unique and don't sound like anyone else. But for many of us curators who've listened to hundreds of thousands of songs and do it on the regular, we've got this weird database in our heads where we can hear a song and just be like, oh, that sounds like this. So it's something
and that's also
that
where you could use Hot or Not. You could use Hot or Not and try and pinpoint like more of what your sound, or people using that feature for that these days, or not really?
More and more people are using Hot or Not to try and identify which genres they will have success in. So you go ahead, you put a song into Hot or Not, and you choose the 4 or 5 genres you think match, and then you see which ones get better result. This is an interesting question. Are you saying that using SubmitHub is better than receiving email? Yes, that's the point of SubmitHub. I would say we are
100%.
We are many steps ahead of that. I mean, yeah, SubmitHub was created because the emails that blogs used to receive were so untargeted and all over the place. And so the idea with SubmitHub is that it allows curators to get the submissions that they're looking for, and it allows
to bring this back on topic, because that's kind of not what this live stream's necessarily about. Imagine if you were to just send an email to a random blogger. You can come onto SubmitHub and put in all of these different like what would you call them? Ds. You've got these 3 Ds, dimensions.
Yeah, the 3 Ds.
And those can calculate the score of how good a curator is specifically for you to actually send their music to. So people, you're saving a lot of time. You're using time more efficiently. So that's how that relates to what this live stream is actually about.
Yeah.
Should we?
Cool.
We're about to hit the 30-minute mark. That
was I think Tilly said we needed to keep this short, so here we are keeping it short.
Yeah.
And I've got a lot of code that I have to do on the back end. For example, in that demo, why wasn't it populating the recommended options in the search after I clicked? I'm hoping that's Spotify's fault and not me, because when I showed this to you earlier today, it was totally working. Our CFO there is pointing out that load shedding is starting. See, people don't even know what load shedding is.
It's very South African relevant.
Yeah, in South Africa, there's a major energy crisis and has been for quite a while now, but we usually go for 12 hours a day without electricity, and it's on a schedule, so you know exactly when your little town or suburb is going to be hit by load shedding. At this point, most of us have got backup plans, battery powered lights, UPS.
I just happen to live in a neighborhood that doesn't get it.
Dylan lives next to a hospital or something, so he doesn't get hit by it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Our servers
all right.
our servers are overseas though, so that's
one more question. With the new feature, will artists see a kind of approval percentage of the similar artists that they typed? I don't actually fully understand this question, so but
I think I do.
You do?
When you currently look at the approval rate, that's essentially based on what genre you're submitting. So they're asking how often does somebody approve someone who sounds like Radiohead? I think that's
like next level.
It's not
so yes,
but it's also not something you can offer to every artist on Spotify. So it's such an insane.
No, but it is like I could say of. Right. So yeah, it's possible. So let's say that I've got all these associated with your approvals on SubmitHub. I could say, oh, you received 100. You've approved 100 songs that match this similar thing, but you were sent 1,000 songs that match this. And so your approval rate within that is how many you approved out of that match. It's hypothetically possible, but we're getting pretty gnarly on the database at that point. I don't have billions of dollars like ChatGPT does, and I don't have Microsoft's data center set up here. It's possible if I've got some free time, but y'all know I got to code that marketplace next. So this was one of the big projects I wanted to finish this year. So I'll keep working on it Thursday, Friday, a little bit over the weekend, but on Monday, we're launching into the marketplace. So in 2 weeks' time, you can probably join us for a live stream where we'll be going over the marketplace because I hope to have it launched within 2 weeks. That's it. So long, farewell, auf Wiedersehen, adieu.
Ciao.